The thing that struck me most when playing through the original Metroid game on NES recently, and which was something that I felt while playing the SNES sequel years ago, is the approach that they both take in designing enemies. That is, that they don't feel like enemies at all. If we compare those present in the Metroid games to other Nintendo properties of the same time, like Super Mario, Zelda, or Capcom's Mega Man, these are games that depict enemies as evil baddies that make life difficult for the protagonist. These will often be henchmen of the title's main villain, or at least some cult of evil present in the game world, that demand the player do combat against challenging opponents. Their programmed behaviors can work to demonstrate some intention of violence or conscious action towards the player hero. That is, we see patrolling Goombas and Koopa Troopas, or wandering Moblins looking for a hero's bones to crush. There's a lot of anthropomorphizing, even with the most monstrous designs, and enemies will often hold a weapon or projectile of some sort. The aesthetic hints at something familiar, something knowable, something conscious. What we don't get much of in these games is a sense of wildlife, of an ecosystem. Though Zelda can come close. This is something that Metroid does so well, and which adds an interesting narrative tone to the games. In Metroid, Samus finds herself on a hostile planet, but the hostilities, apart from a small handful of Mother Brain's lackeys, are instead the planet's wildlife. The dangers that Samus faces cause her harm not from a malevolent intention, but rather an incidental or instinctual reaction. Flowers that shoot out damaging spores are not trying to kill her, and little scurrying blobs that damage upon contact are not attacking the bounty hunter. They are simply doing what they have evolved to do. Their movement patterns display this idea. There are not many enemies that will target Samus explicitly. Most will simply follow innocent movement patterns, going about their way until they happen to find themselves face to face with the infamous hunter. Some will attack, but only really when Samus has come in close contact, when she has come to them, like any animal, predator or prey, would likely do quite naturally. This sense of animality in the enemies works to develop in the player that sense of isolation, of a loneliness and solitude that imbues the entire experience of exploration that the game design demands. The player does not feel like they are in the presence of conscious beings or of thinking things. They are alone on this planet, battling the harsh climates and dangerous environments to achieve their goal. They must make their way through it all without any recourse to guidance. There are no signs or characters to speak to, or any acknowledgement that she's getting any closer to her end. There's no ground control, and the player can do nothing but float around in the most peculiar way. There's not even a villainous monologue to point her in the right direction. Explanation simply does not exist in these games. The addition of a map in Super Metroid is the closest thing to communication that exists in the game. It acts as a silent companion, making occasional suggestions to push the lost Samus in the right direction. Bosses are ambiguous creatures. Exploration is an affair wrought with trial and error. You'll get lost and double back, and then find a secret wall, only to get lost again or turn up in a place that you just were, only to find a new item that will remind you of a previous obstacle that you'll quickly make your way back to, all the while dodging danger the way only an ace hunter like Samus Aran could. If we compare this to the Castlevania series, the other half of the Metroidvania namesake, we find that, while similar in design to Metroid, the Castlevania series also ends up feeling a lot different in its tone and intention. Metroid wants you to feel alone in space, where no one can hear you scream. Castlevania, by contrast, has an entire monstrous castle that wants to hear you scream. It's full of the brim with all sorts of demonic beings ready to liberate the hero's blood from their body. A clear goal is given. Fight your way to the vampire and kill him. The games are, for me, somewhat forgettable, even though I have enjoyed each and every one that I've played. I think, for me, part of this comes down to how the Castlevania series fails to nail an experience. They have a vibe that's undeniable, and they are often filled with great choired soundtracks and nice pixel art, but the feeling I get while playing the game is usually simply, you're a badass looking to kill the vampire man, and there's not much more to it. When Castlevania is working best for me is when it's building on novel moments. The first time that night falls in Castlevania 2, the swinging pendulums in the clock tower, or the falling blocks, both from Castlevania 3, or the turning castle in Super Castlevania. The game works towards moments, the way a film would work for scenes, things that will stay embedded in the memory of the player. Metroid, instead, evokes a really profound sense throughout the entire experience, not just big moments, but about the sum of its parts, the moment to moment. It's about being immersed, of being steeped in mystery and lost on an unknown planet, more akin to the style of immersive design found in the groundbreaking games by Looking Glass Studio. Every moment counts because it means you're still alive, still able to move on, to embody, still able to play. It's interesting, as I think you can really see the arcade influence in Metroid's design. Its maze-like levels and endless swarms of colorful insectoid enemies were old hat by the time that the original game came out in '86, but the designers managed to make something new. Just as Zelda had done away largely with score points and one-up lives, Metroid strips down a lot of its gamey elements. It slows down gameplay and allows the player time to think and to poke, prod at the boundaries, to explore. The changing context of a home console system mutating and evolving the original coin machine's gameplay to suit its new habitat. A truly unforgettable experience.